Let's jump right in. Today we're unpacking a truly fascinating concept introduced by Alastair Pennycook back in 1994. And honestly, it completely changes how we think about the words we use every single day. We're talking about the cultural politics of English. For a lot of us, English is, well, just a practical necessity, right? We use it in school, at work, online, scrolling through social media. It feels like this totally neutral, everyday tool for communication. But what if it's far more than that? What if the language we speak is actually heavily loaded with cultural weight and ultimately power?
Okay, let's dive into this. Why exactly has English become the world's dominant language? We often just kind of assume it's simply because English is incredibly useful, or maybe that it's just the default language of the internet. But I want to challenge you to think a bit more critically here. Is it dominant just because it's handy to have around? Or is there a much deeper, more complex story at play? A story that involves history, power, and the very way our global society is structured.
So, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with the global language question, then we'll unpack the tension between opportunity and inequality. From there, we'll look at the Philippine context, and finally, we'll wrap up by rethinking language and identity.
Starting with Section 1, the global language question, which shows us why English is absolutely more than just a neutral tool.
You see, language doesn't just exist in a vacuum. It is heavily shaped by the society that speaks it. The worldwide spread of English wasn't some happy accident. It didn't just spread like wildfire by chance. It was the result of massive historical forces working together over centuries. We're talking about the history of colonialism and empire laying the initial groundwork. Then culture steps in, spreading English through media, literature, and Western values. Add to that the sheer political and economic power of English-speaking nations. And finally, you have globalization, which pretty much locked the whole shebang in by massively increasing our international connections. English is dominant because history and power literally built it a throne.
Moving to Section 2, opportunity and inequality. This is where we see the double-edged sword of it all.
So the crucial point is that English often functions exactly like a giant gatekeeper. It's not just a nice skill to have on your resume, it's a hard requirement or a barrier that actively decides who gets into the room, who gets the resources, and who actually gets to move up in society. It controls access. It acts as a powerful ladder to success for some, but a massive brick wall blocking the path for others. And I think this comparison brilliantly illustrates exactly what we mean here. Imagine two applicants with the exact same educational qualifications. They're both incredibly hardworking, they both have identical technical skills. But applicant A is a confident English speaker and gets hired on the spot. Applicant B, well, they struggle to express their brilliant ideas in English and they miss out entirely. This happens all the time. It clearly shows us how language proficiency, and not necessarily a person's underlying intelligence or their actual capability to do the job, often unfairly dictates their outcomes in life.
Let's break this down even further. There's a really stark divide between those who reap the rewards of English dominance and those who get left behind by unequal access. On one side, we see the clear winners, right? Students who can easily access international research, professionals landing top-tier jobs, and international workers easily navigating the global market. But then look at the other side. Look at who might be marginalized. If you live in an area with limited educational resources, you just don't get the same starting line. If you lack confidence in English, your ideas might literally go unheard. This creates a system where English proficiency unfairly becomes the main measure of a person's worth.
Let's move to Section 3, the Philippine context. A fascinating case study in multilingualism, and see how this builds on everything we've talked about so far. Taking this from abstract theory into a vibrant, living society, the Philippines is deeply multilingual. Different languages coexist here, but they serve very different roles. English carries massive economic weight, right? It drives their huge BPO industry, it completely dominates higher education, and it provides vital global access. But then you have Filipino, which is the national language uniting the country. And crucially, you have regional languages like Kapampangan, Cebuano, or Ilocano. These aren't just practical ways to communicate. They hold the deep history, the traditions, the stories, and the irreplaceable local identity of the community.
Which brings us to a massive real-world challenge. How do we promote English without devaluing local languages and identity? Because if society is constantly blasting the message that English equals success and intelligence, people might actually start believing that their native tongue is somehow inferior. Actually, let's be clear, the goal here isn't to reject English. Not at all. It's about finding a balance. It's about fully participating in the global economy without making learners feel like they have to surrender their culture at the door to do so.
And that leads us to Section 4, rethinking language and identity, specifically teaching and using English critically. To find actionable ways to embrace global English without sacrificing who we are, we absolutely need to practice what's called critical language awareness. This means looking way beyond just grammar rules and vocabulary lists. It's about understanding that language is deeply connected to society, culture, identity, and yes, unequal power dynamics. It empowers us to ask the hard, uncomfortable questions like, why does society place a higher value on certain ways of speaking? And why do we unconsciously respect some accents more than others? Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it cuts right to the core of a major bias we basically all hold. Accent does not equal intelligence. I'm going to say that again because it's absolutely crucial. Accent does not equal intelligence. Intelligibility matters most. Having a local accent, whether you're from the Philippines, Latin America, the American South, wherever, is not a deficiency. It doesn't mean you have bad English. It just means you have a specific linguistic background. Clear communication and simply being understood are far, far more important than perfectly imitating a British or American speaker. We literally have to stop confusing an accent with a lack of capability.
I think this quote perfectly captures our main takeaway for today. Learning English should open doors to the world without closing the door to our own language, culture, and identity. Mastering a global language like English should be a powerful addition to your identity. It's a tool that empowers you, not a replacement for your native roots. You can absolutely be a fluent, highly confident English speaker while remaining fiercely, wonderfully proud of your local language and exactly where you come from.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. Next time you hear someone speak with a different accent, what will you unconsciously assume about them? Will you automatically judge their intelligence based purely on their language? Understanding the cultural politics of English means recognizing these hidden biases in ourselves and actively choosing to listen to the value of what someone is saying rather than judging how they say it. Thanks for learning with me today, and as always, keep questioning the world around you.